Hi, in this video I'm going to show you how to enable Amazon EKS logging with using Amazon OpenSearch and Fluentbit. As you see in this picture depicts my demo. So basically in my videos I'm going to explain the complete video into two parts. In the first part I'm going to explain how does this design or how does this solution works in a pictorial form explanation. In the next second I'm going to explain you how does these configurations can be made so that you achieve the required demo, right? So before I walk you through the first part of a demo, a kind request, please do subscribe my channel. That would really encourage me a lot. So with that note, we can directly jump to the first part of this demo, right? So here I'm going to explain you how does this connects together and finally have a solution for Amazon EKS logging, right? So here we are using two services, basically Fluentbit, which is a agent which sits on the Amazon EKS, and there is an Amazon OpenSearch service, which is a native AWS service, which will help you to collect the logs from the logs being forwarded by the Fluentbit. Okay, so basically the design or the solution of my demo looks something like this. Okay, so here it contains Amazon EKS, which is nothing but a managed Kubernetes workload solution, right? So this is our Amazon EKS cluster, which contains, like, let's say one or two EKS nodes. On top of the EKS nodes, we're gonna host Fluentbit. Okay, so we're gonna host the Fluentbit service, which actually extract the required logging from the Amazon EKS as per you define. Okay, so when you deploy a Fluentbit on this Amazon EKS, so whenever you deploy this as a pod on the Amazon EKS cluster, you will tell in the specification file saying Fluentbit has to extract these kind of data, these pattern data from the Amazon AKS, and it has to forward those data to a destination. Here the destination is Amazon OpenSearch service. Okay, so which is basically a native service from AWS. This service is called as a successor of the Kibana service, basically, right? And it provides a very elegant, very fluent search engine. It helps you to do the analytics, monitoring, reporting, right? So anything that you can do on the your logs, okay, on your or your enterprise logs. So this service provides that capability. Okay, and here on the Kubernetes workload, yes, we need a solution which actually gathers those logs, stores into some places, and on top of those logs, we need to have a capability where we can do all those the analyzing the logs, creating the alerts, reporting, right, monitoring, etc, etc. Okay, so for this case, the scenario of this my demo is very simple. I have already pre-created an Amazon EKS cluster. On top of the Amazon EKS cluster, I will be hosting Fluentbit, which is a pod. Okay, so basically it's a pod, it's a service as a pod, will be hosted on the Amazon EKS, and this pod will be acting as a daemon set. Okay, and this daemon set will, what it does is it actually extracts the logs from the Amazon EKS and forwards those logs to Amazon OpenSearch as per our definitions that we define in the the pod specification files, basically. Okay, so that's the reason when you have a EKS cluster, you host a Fluentbit, you configure a Fluentbit in a such a way that you will tell Fluentbit saying hey Fluentbit, this is my OpenSearch endpoint, and these are this is the location, these are the credentials, right? And you have to forward all those logs of these particular patterns on this Amazon OpenSearch service, right? Once this connection is done, then automatically the log starts to flow from Amazon EKS to this OpenSearch. And when you open this Amazon OpenSearch dashboard service, you can do all kind of analytics that you needed. Okay, so basically this is the aim of my demo. Okay, so now I'm going to take you to the second part of the demo, where I'm going to explain how you can configure these setup, and finally you have the logs being flowing into your Amazon OpenSearch dashboard, and you can do all those required analytics. Okay, all right, so I will take you to the my AWS account. So this is my AWS account, basically, and I have already opened multiple tabs, and all these tabs are belongs to my AWS accounts North Virginia region. And as I said, I have already created Amazon EKS cluster, right, which is of latest version 1.23, and the status of the EKS cluster is active. That's because the creating the EKS cluster is very time consuming. That's the reason I have already pre-created, and then I started to configure these two services together so that to forward the logs. Okay, so this is the one service. I'm going to take you to another tab. So this is also my AWS account, and it is belongs to a region that is US East one, that is North Virginia region. Here I have created I created an Amazon OpenSearch service. In that we call it as a domain. Okay, generally they one instance they call it as a domain, right? I created OpenSearch domain with a name like OpenSearch EKS hyphen logging. That is OS EKS hyphen logging, and the current status is active. All right, so this is how I created. So I will show you how did I create this, right? And then so this is the dashboard. I'm going to explain these implications later, right? For now I will just close it off. Okay, so not required. Okay, I will explain you the let me come back to the IAM console. In the IAM console I have created a policy, and the policy definition is something like this. Okay, so basically this is a overview of my AWS account. Now I will take you back to the back to my folder. Okay, so as you know, so whenever I create the whenever I create a demo, I create a certain help files. Okay, so what is this help file? So this is the file which contains all the commandlets that you need to run, right? So I will go to that help file. So this is my help file. So with this help file basically contains all the commandlets that you need to follow one after the other to achieve this scenario, right? And that's the reason I have created this help file, and it contains the AWS CLI commands. Okay, so here I'm using AWS CLI plus AWS EKCTL commandlets. Okay, so if your system has not been installed with these utilities, maybe you can watch my previous videos where I have explained about how you can configure or install these utilities in your system, and then you can use the CLIs to communicate with your AWS resources, like here Amazon EKS, right, and OpenSearch engine. Okay, all right, so I'm using Amazon EKCTL tool, that is EKSCTL, that is EKS command line utility, right? So I'm using this utility command. I'm using this command line utility and creating a EKS cluster. Okay, so that's the reason I will show you. Anyways, these files. Okay, I have 4 files for this demo, as you see here. So these are the 4 files. One is the ES domain. So this is the JSON file which contains the definition of your OpenSearch engine. This is the Fluentbit demonstrate configurations, that is YAML specification file. And this is the Fluentbit IAM policy, and this is the help file. Okay, so I'm going to share all these 4 files in the GitHub repo, and the GitHub repo link will be shared in this video's description. You can find it from there and try to experiment this from your side. Yeah. All right. Now, so this, as I explained, so this is the help file, contains all those commands that you need to run. You need to run it from top to bottom. Okay. Okay, so first part that you see here, it is just to create a EKS cluster and deal with the EKS cluster. Okay, so here for the demo purpose, you're going to create it for the first time, and the rest you can use it on demand, like deleting, right, getting the pods. Deleting is something you do whenever you want to clear off all the resources. Okay, so basically so this is the command, and down the line if you see here, the commands to follow is a command oriented to services. Okay, so for example, you have the EKS cluster ready. Now you need to configure the Fluentbit, you need to configure the IRSA, that is IAM role for services, service accounts. So all those configurations you do here. Okay, I will also walk you through these commands. Okay, now so what I do is I'm gonna walk you through these commands, how does these commands works, and how does this response in the real time. Okay, so here in this demo I am going to use Windows PowerShell. So I have AWS CLI been installed, EKCTL been installed, as I explained earlier. Now I'm going to use the same Windows PowerShell session to communicate with these utilities and try to achieve this scenario. Okay, all right, I open the Windows PowerShell, and the first command which I run for this configuration purpose is AWS configure. What is this AWS configure? The AWS configure is a AWS CLI tool which will help you to set the context of your AWS account, right? So here, to set the context, you're going to provide AWS access key ID, secret access key. Then you're going to set the reason. Okay, so you will have to set the reason to your reason. So here my reason is US student, so I will show you how did I set it back again in the later case. And then finally, once you are done with all these inputs, right, so currently the selected part, so try to follow me. So here the command I'm going to explain, I will select that particular command and output in this format, and you will see in the orange form. Okay, so whatever you see, this is the format I'm going to explain. Okay, so this is the AWS configure. So whatever been selected in the orange color is the something I'm explaining. Okay, so don't get confused by the outputs, just follow the orange color of my explanation. All right, so first one, we are setting the context by running this command. The next one, once you are set to the context, you need to verify it. So how do you do it? To do that, you will be running the command that is AWS STS get color identity. So why I'm doing is I just need to make sure that which IAM user I'm using to interact with the my AWS account, right? So this is my AWS account and this is the my IAM user, okay? And this user has the highest privilege, that is admin privilege. That's the reason I'm able to do all those down the line exercise. For example, in the enterprise side, maybe you will not get the administrative privilege, but not least privileges. Okay, so in that case, you should have the EKS permission. You should have the IAM policy creation, IAM role creation permissions. You should have permission on the OpenSearch, right? So basically, you should have the other general permissions. Since you are dealing with EKS, IAM, and then you are dealing with the OpenSearch service, then you need to have access, minimum access on these services. And here and there, bits and pieces, if you are missing access, maybe you need to add these. Okay, so that's a brief on least privilege of the demo. Okay, all right. So now we are also made sure that we are had the we have a right context and right context to my AWS account. Okay, the next step is to create a EKS cluster. How did I create a EKS cluster? If you see this command here, I'm using ekctl create cluster. This is my cluster name, node type equal to t2.large. Node is one because this is a demo. I am creating only one node to avoid the cost, and setting the the auto scaling limit from minimum 1 to maximum 2, and the reason is equal to US East 1, and the zones of node spread is I have used 3 zones. In fact, it has only 2 nodes, so basically it will use US East A and US East B, right? Maybe only whichever is the closest one, so it will use, and it will spread the nodes across these availability zones. All right, so these are my availability zone configurations of my EKS cluster. Okay, so once I hit the enter, all right, so this commandlet runs ages, not ages, basically 15 minutes. Okay, if I can show you, so this command has run up to 15 minutes and created a EKS cluster for me. So I will show you. If you see the follow the selected part, that is orange part of the selection, you see it has started at 1455, and if I scroll down, right, if I scroll down, it has ended at here. That is, if I can select. So at the end, you will see EKS cluster OS EKS in US East 1 region is ready, right? So basically, it has taken nearby, nearby, how much? So nearby 14 minutes, basically, yeah, 16 minutes. Okay, so once I run this command, and once you see the message, something like this in the down the line, right? So this is very straightforward way of creating the EKS cluster, but in the production, maybe you would be using Terraform or Python, or it could be any kind of infrastructure as a code skills. Okay, maybe CloudFormation to spin up our EKS cluster. Then in that case, you will have a specified EKS cluster configurations. When you use ekctl directly, it will use very generic, very default configurations of EKS and creates a basically creates the EKS cluster for you. Okay, once the EKS cluster is ready, then what I did is I want to make sure that my nodes are also ready. So what I did is I run a command kubectl get nodes. Okay, so you see I have the node been ready and it is in a ready state. Okay, so that's what I did. Now let me go next. Okay, so I will just go down. So basically let me go down. Yeah, I'm gonna scroll it up. So next command I run is kubectl get nodes, and the nodes are been ready, right? And then comes let me go to the next commands. Okay, so I will follow from the here. So till now we are done with the EKS cluster and getting the nodes. Okay, now we follow the commands to configure the required scenario configurations. Okay, so here in the scenario, in this demo scenario configurations, we first have to do configure the IRSA for Fluentbit. Okay, what is IRSA? That is IAM role for service account of Fluentbit. Fluentbit is going to be a part or going to be an application which is need to be hosted on your EKS cluster, and this Fluentbit will use IRSA, that is IAM role for service account, right? Basically that pod will use that IRSA to communicate to the OpenSearch. That's the basically underlying theory of this one. Yeah, so to configure the IRSA for Fluentbit, we need to use we need to run the next command, that is ekctl util associate IAM OIDC provider. So first we have to enable the we need to enable the IAM OIDC provider for the EKS cluster. Okay, and that's the reason I'm running this ekctl command to configure the OIDC provider for my EKS cluster. I will go down. So basically I was talking about earlier, earlier I have set the context of my AWS account to AP South 1, that is Mumbai region. Now I need to switch back to the US East region because my EKS cluster is in US East 1. Okay, so that's the reason again I ran AWS configure and set the context back to the US East region. Don't get confused. I just switched from AP South to US East region. Okay, that's the reason. So that's the reason you see the above command. Just focus on the selected part. This command was throwing the error because it was not able to figure it out. Because why? Because the context was belongs to AP South, AP South 1 region. To change this, change the context from one region to other region, I have to again run the command, that is AWS configure, and I have changed the region. Maybe you can do it in another alternative ways, but this is how I did it. Okay, and then the next command which I run is to configure the IODC provider for the EKS cluster. Okay, that you see here, EKSTL utils associate hyphen IAM hyphen OIDC provider hyphen hyphen cluster name and hyphen hyphen approve. Right, so once you run this command, basically it will associate a IAM IODC provider. So this IODC provider is a default configuration that has to be there on the EKS cluster, so that IRSA will work. That is a IAM role for service account will start to work. Okay, then in the next command we are creating a Fluentbit policy. Okay, so I'm going to tell you the reason for creating the Fluentbit policy. As I said, we were creating the IRSA, that is IAM role for service account, right? So that service account needs to have a IAM policy. Okay, so this is the policy we're going to attach it. For that case, I'm creating a very basic IAM policy in my account. Okay, so I'm going to take you to this fluentbit-policy.json file. So this is the fluentbit-policy.json file. It contains action, that is elasticsearch colon es https colon star. That basically, earlier it was called Elasticsearch, now it is being called as an OpenSearch engine in AWS. So that's the reason the naming convention will start something like this. Okay, so basically we are allowing only es colon https permissions. Yeah, and then so then this is the resource we are targeting. So basically I'm creating the OpenSearch engine name with the name called OS EKS hyphen logging, right? And that's the reason we are pre-creating the ARN by assuming that we're going to create a OpenSearch domain name with a name something like this in the region US East 1, right? In the region US East 1 of my account, this one, right? And then frames IRM. Okay, then frames a resource ARN. Okay, till now while I was running this command, the OpenSearch engine was not exist, but still I framed the ARN of the resource, right, like this. And eventually we created a policy with this. Okay, so once you run this command, so earlier I was throwing the error because there was some syntactical error was there, right? All right, so there was some syntactical error. That's the reason it thrown the error. I will just go back again. Okay, so we were here. So while I was throwing this one, so there were some syntactical error, and eventually eventually this was failing, right? You can ignore the other parts. Now we will go to the actual. So when I fix the basically, if you see the what was the error from above above all failed commands, if you see right here, I'm using AWS IAM create policy hyphen hyphen policy name. Then this is my policy name, that is Fluentbit policy hyphen policy document. I was using dot fluentbit dot policy. Basically, this is the path. Basically, this is the path where I have kept this fluentbit.json file. But I was forgetting the syntax of the policy document, right? And that's where I corrected here. If you can figure it out, if you are doing the same thing, don't forget to follow this syntax. That is AWS IAM create policy hyphen hyphen policy name fluentbit policy document. You need to give file colon /2 fluentbit.json. Then only the AWS takes. Okay, so this is the syntax of AWS CLI you need to follow, right? Eventually I was able to create an IAM policy, which I'm going to show you here, right? So this is the IAM policy which we created because of that command run. Okay, and I have fixed this file /1 something like this. You see I got fixed it, right? Earlier I was just doing dot then policy.json name. Okay, all right, so basically this is how I created the policy. Let's go to the next ones. Okay, in the next command, if you see here, we are creating a namespace. Okay, because we need to create now service account, right? So service account has to be kept in a namespace. The namespace for this demo I'm keeping is simply logging. kubectl create namespace, that is logging, and I created. So I ran the command kubectl create logging, and and here you go, the namespace is been created after running the command. Okay, all right, so we are done with the creating their namespace. Now comes the actual command, that is ekctl command to create and associate a policy to a IRSA, that is IAM role for service account. Okay, this is very big command. I'm going to explain it bit by bit. I will just select this, right? Okay, all right. So this is the command which I ran to create a IRSA for the EKS cluster by attaching the policy which we created above. ekctl create IAM service account. The name of the service account is Fluentbit. Namespace is logging. Cluster is OS EKS. Attach a policy ARN. The policy which we created above. That's the policy ARN I have given here. Approve, right? So this is approve and override existing service account. So that's the approve, and this is the another the command, the another parameter that you need to pass, that is override existing service account. Okay, so once I hit this command, so I have the output which will help me to create, basically this is the total command and output. So this helped me to create a service account with a name called Fluentbit in a namespace. If I can select this one, so this is create IAM role for service account in the namespace logging, and the name is Fluentbit. Okay, so now we have created a service account. Okay, so in the next command I'm just checking whether what is the if the service account, if the service account is created or not, by running the kubectl command. So if you see here, you need to be very cautious here. So we have run the ekctl. Now we are checking if the service account is created or not with using ekctl, that is, sorry, with using kubectl. We created the service account with using ekctl commandlet. We are checking with using kubectl commandlet. Okay, so kubectl is Kubernetes native command line utility. ekctl is cluster oriented, that is a AWS EKS cluster oriented command line utility. Okay, but still this ekctl has the capacity to penetrate into the EKS cluster and configure the service account for the EKS cluster. Okay, and then once the service account has been created, you can identify that service account with using kubectl -n logging subscribe and describe, sorry, kubectl namespace logging describe the service account with the name Fluentbit, right? And that's it has given the output saying like this service account is being created successfully, right? All right, so that's the creating the service account exercise. Now we go to the next one. Okay, so in the next task of our demo is provision Amazon OpenSearch cluster. Okay, so basically Amazon OpenSearch is a big cluster. So to create this EKS cluster, you have to do some exercise. Basically here I have used only the AWS CLI to create a OpenSearch cluster. So how did I do? I'm going to say going to explain you now. So here I have kept some variable, that is what is my domain name. Okay, what is my domain name? This is the domain name I gave in the Fluentbit policy. Okay, so if you see here, OS EKS-logging, right? So that's the same name I'm using here. Don't make any difference. Just keep the same as same as it is. It is a case sensitive, so make it a domain name exactly like how you given in the Fluentbit policy, right? And then the ES version, that is Elasticsearch version, I'm using OpenSearch _0.1 version. Then this is the username, this is the password name which I needed to create the cluster. Finally, we are using AWS OpenSearch create domain -hyphen CLI input as a JSON, right? I'm going to show you this ES underscore domain.json file. So this is the JSON file which will describe how does your OpenSearch cluster has to look like. Okay, anyways, these files will be shared in video's description. You can find it from there. Here I'm going to walk you through this one. So basically you are defining your cluster configurations here. The name of your cluster, engine version, the cluster configuration. Okay, so this is your cluster configuration, that is rfi.large search engine, instant count equal to 1. Then the other configurations are false. EBS options are something like EBS enabled, volume type equal to ZP2, then volume size equal to 100 GB, something like that. Then the access policy, this is the policy which we created above. And here be careful, you have to change the resource ARN, something belongs to your account. Okay, so if you are using my same file, make sure that you make this change according to your ARN. Okay, so I will just scroll a bit. So here you need to change the region. If you are staying in the same region, no problem, or else you need to change the region. This is change your account number. If you are changing the domain name also, you need to change the domain name here. Okay, all right. And then we go next in the snapshot option. I'm just keeping default, cognate option default, right? So everything is default configurations. If you see, just follow this one. And finally, the advanced security configurations options, you see enabled. the internal database enabled, okay, and then the master, if you let me do control Z. So this is master user option. This is a master user, okay. So whenever you create a EKS cluster, by default you're going to feed some user ID and password, which will become a master user ID and password of your OpenSearch engine, okay. So this is my username, that is OS EKS, right? Then this is my credential, that is my super secret credential, okay. So these are the the description of my the OpenSearch cluster, how it should look like, okay. So this is the same JSON file is been fed into this AWS CLI command. I'm going to show you how did I run it and what did it return to me, okay. So basically EKS cluster, sorry, the OpenSearch cluster creation also time consuming as EKS cluster. I will just show you the command. So this is very simple command, right? That is AWS OpenSearch create domain -hyphen CLI hyphen input JSON. This is your JSON you have given. Okay, so finally it has thrown some error for the first time. I fixed it, okay. And then when I run it, when I fix it, so basically this is the working ES domain file. Remember, this is a working ES domain.json file. That's what I have fed it after error. That is AWS OpenSearch create domain. And eventually it has initiated creating the OpenSearch cluster. But eventually to create a OpenSearch engine, it has taken like nearby maybe 5 to 10 minutes. Yeah. And finally, once you see the status of your OpenSearch service or OpenSearch domain name, something like this active, which means that your OpenSearch cluster is up and running fine. Right. Okay. So basically this is how you configure. Okay, so basically this is how you configure and create the OpenSearch cluster, okay. So I will just go back again. So we were in the second option, that is provision Amazon OpenSearch cluster. Once you provision, then you can check the health status of your OpenSearch cluster by using this option, or you can directly go to the portal and check if the status is equal to active. Once the status of your OpenSearch cluster becomes active, then you need to run the next command. That is, the next command is to configure the OpenSearch access. So what does this actually mean? So basically, basically you are making some fine tune in the OpenSearch cluster in a such a way that somebody can push the logs into the OpenSearch cluster or OpenSearch container, okay. So that's what I'm doing it here. So here we need to do two things here. One is first retrieve the Fluentbit role ERN. So earlier on the EKS cluster we created IRS here, that is I am role for service account we have created. So we need to get that ERN of that role. We needed it. I will just explain why we need it. Then finally we also need to get the OpenSearch endpoint by running this command, okay. So this is the command. And finally we need to update the OpenSearch internal database by running a API, okay. So I'm going to tell you how did I run the API and why did I do it. I'll just go back to the down. So this is big wait here, so we have waited for a long time here. I did check the status of my OpenSearch cluster for twice, right? Once your OpenSearch cluster is up and running fine, so you will see this one's, okay. So basically now I'm gonna get the Fluentbit role, okay. How do I do that? Is ekctl get service account. This is the cluster name. This is the namespace, okay. Finally, this is the IRSA of the EKS cluster, okay. That is, this is the cluster. This is the basically ARN of the IRSA, that is I am role for service account on the EKS cluster. You need this one, okay. Along with that, I was also talking about get the endpoint of your OpenSearch cluster, okay. So this is the command that you run, that is AWS OpenSearch describe the domain name. So this is OS EKS logging cluster name, and then output equal to text. I'm just verifying the domain name status. So this is the domain name that you get it, okay. So this domain name you can also find it from here. I'm going to take you back to the my AWS console in the OpenSearch service, right? And here you see the domain endpoint, okay. So this is the domain endpoint. If you remove the https:// of this string, then that itself is a domain endpoint, and that you can retrieve from using this command. And that's what I'm doing it here, okay. So we need this command so to run the next command. What is the next command? The next command is to update the Elasticsearch internal database, okay. So basically this is an API call that we need to run. So here I'm using curl command, okay. So basically I would have used invoke rest method, but to save the time I'm just using curl command, and I will show you how did I run it from the since this is my Windows system. How did I do it? No, I have not done from my Windows system, but I used the AWS CLI from the portal, okay, and ran the command. So the curl command would look something like this. That is curl hyphen s caps s hyphen u. That is this is a security credential. That is a username colon password that you put in the username and password here. This is execute, and and we are executing the patch method here, and we are framing the URI something like this. Okay, I'm going to tell you. So whatever it comes here, whatever I'm selecting here, that is an endpoint of your OpenSearch cluster, and which we retrieved by using running the above commands. Okay, so this is your endpoint following the https colon. That is basically that command, and it is being attached with the underscore open distribution underscore security underscore API role mapping, right? Allow all access and pretty. And in this one, the header is equal to something like content type, and then finally we are passing some data, and the data format is something like this. Okay, so you just need to run this command. That is op add operation equal to add path is this one in the backend, and value is this one. So basically we are adding a service account, right? Service account permissions to the Elastic internal search database. So I just copied this curl command. I did not do, I didn't break my head to to convert that curl command into invoke REST method to run from my Windows PowerShell. But what I did is I just open the cloud shell, that is AWS cloud shell, right? And I run the command here. So I'm going to show you curl sh. You see the curl sh, right? And maybe we can run it again as well. So it does not make sense, but we can still run it because I'm going to just copy this. Maybe I'm not sure whether it is throw the error, but I'm going to show you how did I do. I just copied that, paste it here, right? And that's all. So this is how I did it. Okay, so basically you are just executing the curl command, which contains this is username and password, patch comma patch method. This is the complete URI, header, data, right? So don't forget that this data format has to be in a such a way, and in the add value equal to, this is the this is the IRSA of your EKS cluster, right? All right, and finally you should see the output equal to status equal to okay, all access and updated. Okay, once that is done, you are done with the Amazon OpenSearch access configurations. Okay, finally we have come to the last step, that is deploy the Fluentbit. Okay, so basically we have set the Amazon OpenSearch service something like this. Now we gonna host the Fluentbit in a such a way that it will point to this Amazon search. It will also point, it becomes a bridge. For example, Fluentbit is a kind of agent which reads the logs from the Amazon EKS cluster, or basically any kind of Kubernetes clusters, right? It extracts the data from there and it will push us into the Amazon OpenSearch service. Okay, so basically that's what this Fluentd does, Fluentbit does. Okay, so remember, this is not a Fluentd, this is a Fluentbit. Okay, so to do that, to configure the Fluentbit as a daemon set, I just run a command kubectl apply hyphen this is the file name, which looks very simple, but under the hood this fluentbit.yaml file is very complex. Okay, so here in this file, anyways, I'm gonna share this file in the GitHub repo, and the GitHub repo link will be shared in this video's description. You can find it from there anyway. So I'm going to walk you through this one quickly, but a very, very important point to remember. In this one, you see there is a part in the line number 74, output elasticsearch.conf. Okay, so in this one, you have to not to miss to provide the certain data here. You see, you need to give your OpenSearch cluster endpoint name, which we extract just now as it is without HTTPS, yeah, and then you give the AWS region. Okay, so these are the changes you need to make in this Fluentbit according to your OpenSearch cluster. Okay, remember line number 78, right, and line number 82 has to be changed with your OpenSearch cluster endpoint name. How you can find it from the command, or you can just remove the https :/ and whatever starts from search ending with .com, that value has to be put in here, right, and AWS region. Okay, so once this has been done, so this is your ready to eat or ready to execute Fluentbit YAML file, right? So basically it is just a just a Kubernetes specification file or Kubernetes deployment file. Basically it does configure multiple configurations on your EKS cluster to achieve the final destination, making sure that your Fluentbit service is running as a pod on your EKS cluster and doing its job, right? That is extracting the logs from the EKS cluster, pushing into the Amazon OpenSearch cluster. Okay, so here first one we are creating the, I will just quickly walk you through this one as well. So here we are using the API version that is for our back. Here we are creating the cluster role, right? So the cluster role name is Fluentbit read. We are providing certain permissions to this one, right? Similarly, the cluster role binding. So above you created a role and this role is being referred here. You are binding the role, and then you are creating the config map. That is in the config map, right? So you see the in the config map you are giving the name of this config map, namespace is logging. Basically, remember that all the configurations we are putting in a same namespace which I created just while starting the demo, right? And this is the label we are giving. Then we have the then in the config map. So config map is the place where you define all those, the log extraction and the log pushing configurations will be done here. Configuration file server, input, filter, and output. Okay, so this is the basic, this is the place where actually everything is being configured. Okay, one is the Fluentbit configurations. So this is the place where you maintain the configurations of your Fluentbit, right? And then this is the Kubernetes input configurations. Okay, so basically the logs from your Kubernetes, like war logs, container, all those logs will be forwarded, right? And then filter the Kubernetes input Kubernetes configurations, and then you have the filter Kubernetes configurations, right? Then you have the output. So output is nothing but, so input is nothing but as I said, input. All right, so basically okay, so let me select this one, right? So input. Okay, so the name is tail. Okay, so the input Kubernetes configurations filter. So basically these are the input. So if I can show, what if I can explain you in a layman term, this is the configuration which you are telling to the Fluentbit in a such a way that hey Fluentbit, get these logs, belongs to this path, parser equal to docker, right? And db equal to the local db, right? With the configuration of 50 MB and skipping, the skip long line on, then the refresh every 10 seconds. Okay, basically, right? And then finally you are on this input, you are doing certain filters here, right? And finally this is the output configuration, in the sense you are saying like to which place it has to dump those logs. Okay, that is the OpenSearch endpoint. Okay, and belongs to this region. Similarly, past configurations, we are doing some certain past configurations as well, right? So these are the past configurations. I'm not going to walk you through this one. Then finally, so basically that's the config map we are using, and we are defining some config map, and that will be used down the line. So I'll just show you how it is being used. I will just see the config map. This is the Fluentbit config map. If I do Control F and next, right, it is down the line, and we will show how it has been used. Okay, so here we are configuring the daemon set. So what is daemon set? Daemon set is just a default part that will be hosted across the number of the EKS nodes or the Kubernetes nodes. You have 4 nodes, then you will have the 4 pods. Okay, so that kind of mechanism of deploying the pods across the nodes, whenever there is a creation happens or deletion happens, that kind of configuration in the Kubernetes is called as a daemon set. In the sense, by default, this setup, the pods will be exist on the EKS cluster or the Kubernetes cluster, right? And this is my daemon set name, logging, right? And this is the Kubernetes. So this is we are just defining the Kubernetes. And here, if you see here, this is very important point. This is the place where actually the Fluentbit application will be hosted on your EKS cluster. Okay, so if you see the Kubernetes -app, that is Fluentbit logging app. Okay, so we are hosting that. We are extracting this image from from the public Docker hub and hosting on the on the Amazon EKS cluster. Okay, and that is being done by only these few lines of configuration definitions. Okay, and that is how powerful this specification file is. Okay, that is how powerful the Kubernetes is. Okay, I'm going to go to the next space. This is the space where we are defining certain specifications, and here we are doing the Kubernetes app equal to we are just specifying the Fluentbit logging app. Okay, in this one we are you see the app, right? Basically, we are finding the we are fine tuning the, or we are defining the configurations of the Fluentbit logging app here. Okay, so here this is the app version, right? Cluster service equal to true, Prometheus true, this one true. Okay, then the containers we are defining these versions and image versions and all. Finally, we have the the config map. Okay, this is the config map which actually uses, which actually this Fluentbit uses to extract the to extract the logs from the EKS cluster and push it into the OpenSearch engine. Okay. All right. So this is the basically very high level, very 100-foot level walkthrough of this Fluentbit YAML. Okay. Hope that this helped you. So I use that file and I just run a command called kubectl apply, and it eventually, I will just drag down. So you can just ignore the errors. What I did is I tried to run the curl command. Fortunately, it didn't go well because curl is not hosted in this Windows PowerShell and it was throwing some error. Okay. All right. So I will go to the next one. So this is this is the place where we did describe our domain name, right? That is we just to get that the domain status endpoint, right? And finally, okay. So I will go to the Fluentbit deployment command. Okay. So okay, fine. I will just come back here. So I run the command called kubectl apply -f dot fluentbit.yaml. Okay, so this fluentbit YAML file is present in the folder that is Kubernetes logging with OpenSearch Fluentbit. Okay, and you see the Fluentbit. Okay, and that's the reason I run the command like kubectl apply -f dot fluentbit.yaml file, which is belongs to this path. Okay, this is the path which I showed just a while ago, and then kubectl apply -f dot file has created the cluster role binding, config map, daemon set app, that is Fluentbit has been created. Okay, and finally I have run the command that is the default command, that is a magic command. Okay, basically kubectl get pods belongs to this namespace, right? And finally I was able to see that my Fluentbit is running. I can still again show you that my Fluentbit is still running. Okay, so I just run the command like kubectl get pods, and this is the name. Okay, so once this is done, then congratulations. Okay, basically you have configured your Amazon EKS or any kind of managed Kubernetes cluster. It could be AKS as well, or it could be GKS, that is a Google Kubernetes engine as well, GKE as well. So you can do the same step to achieve to achieve these configurations basically. So here on this Amazon EKS cluster, so this video focuses more on Amazon EKS cluster, and which is what I can give the guarantee. So in this Amazon EKS cluster, this is how we hosted the Fluentbit application, which actually been configured or which actually been equipped in a such a way that it will extract the logs from the Amazon EKS cluster and push it into the Amazon OpenSearch service. Finally, we can see this one. Okay. Now time has come to open the dashboard of this Amazon search and see if the logs have been flowing. Okay. So for that case, what I do is I'm gonna go to my OS EKS logging OpenSearch cluster. I'm gonna go back to the domain. So in this one, this is your domain which you created. Click on this one. You will see there is in the general information, you will see the OpenSearch dashboard URL. Click on this one, right? And it will gonna open you the OpenSearch web page, okay, through which you can access. Okay, so basically I have already pre-logged in, and that's the reason it is taking me to the directly to the dashboard app home. When you do for the first time, maybe you need to log in. Maybe I will just log out and log in. Okay, so I will just log out. Okay, so I'm going to log in. So I'm going to log in with using the user ID and password. I will go back to the command. So here we have the user. This is my username. Paste it, and this is my another way is my password. So this is my password, right? I'm going to use this password, and that's all. Click on the login with using. So this is the master user ID and password. Once you log in, so you see this is the dashboard, and from where you can start exploring the the OpenSearch dashboards. For example, just click on this one, and here you're going to add the configurations. Okay, since we have configured the Fluentbit, right, I have already made the index configurations of particular log already. This pipeline has already started to work, in the sense Fluentbit is already pushing the logs from this cluster to this Amazon OpenSearch service, and the log should look something like this. Okay, I'm going to show you that. So if you are doing for the first time, you need to configure the index of the OpenSearch dashboard. If you are not done, maybe you have to do it again. I will just go to the discover. So if you go to the discover, in the discover we have created an index called Fluentbit, and now you see the logs are being flowing. Okay, so if you see here, there are so many logs are being flown now. Okay, so maybe I will just open one, right? And in this one you can see in this table format, or also you can see in the JSON format as well. So you see the logs are being flowing now. Okay, How do you guarantee that this is our logs? Okay, I will show you some clues that it is belongs to our logs only. Okay, so basically, this is a kube system log, EKS privilege, and then the maybe we will use the another. This is not that much clear one. I will go this one. Go to this one. Right, I'm gonna show you that EKS privileged. Okay, so yeah, okay, so Kubernetes namespace, kube system. I'm gonna this one. Right, so this is the, if you see here, right, this is ECR kubectl minimum. Okay, so basically you know how does these logs are being appearing. Okay, all these logs are being appearing because you know it started to flow. So I'll just do to this one. Right, I'm gonna do this one, so there is no search matching for this criteria. Right, filter. Okay, add filters, timestamp, select operators is key values. Basically, you know, the one which I have shown you, so that is how the basically it looks. Yeah, I'm just showing you. Okay, so this is how the log started to. This is a dummy one. Okay, yeah, so basically, you know, once the required connections are being, you know, the being established, the logs belongs to your, you know, the your index. Okay, so index starts to push the log, something like this, and you should be able to see the logging here. Okay, and you are ready to use this OpenSearch dashboard for your reporting, incidenting, doing the analyzing, providing some, you know, making some machine learning application on this one. All right, so all those you can do it from here. All right, so finally I have shown you the things to be shown in this video. Finally, I can request, please do subscribe my channel. That would really encourage me a lot. So with that note, thank you, thanks a lot, and see you in the next video.